So the next part is the session plans. Now, like I said, you have to select a specific cardiovascular exercise from your program card that we've just had a look at, and you need to write it in more detail. So this is your cardiovascular one here. Now you've got to talk about the timings and intensity, which you have just done in your program card already, so you're essentially going to copy that again. The exercise and muscle group, so if we use our main CV, we talked about the treadmill, and you must also talk about the muscle groups that get used. Again, that's mentioned on page 291 in your manual, and it tells you what muscle groups are actually being used on the cardiovascular equipment. The teaching points, which might need to be repeated. Alternatives, so you could say, for example, the cross trainer is an alternative of the treadmill because it's a cardiovascular piece of equipment which uses rhythmical activity. And you also must write adaptations for these 4 special populations that we've spoken about. So let's use the cross trainer as an example. And we can talk about adaptations for these lot. And I'm just giving examples here. But if we're talking about 14 to 16 age range, and all of this information is on page 189 in your manuals again. So at 14 to 16, due to growth spurts, the legs tend to be disproportionately longer than the arms do, as an example. And what that can do sometimes is create bad coordination for people of that age. So if this were the cross trainer, for example, instead of saying they're going to move their arms along with their legs on the cross trainer, you could say that they're going to hold the central handles and they're only going to move with their legs. And what that's going to do is sort of reduce the necessity of coordination. So that's a way you could adapt that exercise for somebody who's 14 to 16. For older adults, you could maybe talk about lowering the working intensity to make sure that blood pressure doesn't get too high, for example. Pre and postnatal clients, you could adapt it by saying that you're going to reduce the time on the machine, especially when a prenatal person is on their 3rd trimester, because of the baby's weight creating stress in your lower back. So that could be a way you could adapt the exercise by reducing the time spent on it. A disabled client, it's not enough to say depends on the disability. You must pick a specific disability, and you must pick 2 different disabilities based on your 4 session plans here. For example, this one you could have blindness as a possible disability, and a way of adapting it is you could say that you could use more verbal teaching points. So when you're actually teaching a blind person this exercise, you could be more verbal rather than use any sort of visual cues. So the same thing here for resistance. So this will be your machine exercise here of your choice. And you would do exactly the same thing as you just did with your cardiovascular. The next one is your free weight exercise. The same procedure. And your final one is your body weight exercise. And you only need to pick 1 exercise from your program card of each one there. And you need to talk about that in detail.